Hello guys, this is Donald's Movies, and welcome to the 6th video in the Races of Azeroth series. As requested by many of you, in this video I will be covering the Kobold. They're one of the original races that have been in World of Warcraft since the beginning, and they also made some appearances in Warcraft 3, in the RPG books and all of that, so without further ado, let's just get into their lore. So far, for most of the races that I have covered by now, we have known their roots, where they come from, what ancient or god they worship, but with the kobolds, it is a bit of a different case. There are different speculations. Some say they're one of the original races on the world of Azeroth, like you have the trolls, but the most likely theory, and presumably accepted by Blizzard as canon, is that they're actually Titan creations. So if you want to learn more about this, just check out my Curse of Flesh video. I kinda explain everything in detail, but basically when the Titans came, they created their own race, and there were two versions of the original Earthen. So you have the first failed version, and the second version that we know as the Dwarves. The failed version were the Trogs, and when the old gods cast their curse, they lost most of their powers, along with their intelligence, so they looked nothing like the original creations. Although in the Warcraft magazine it was mentioned that the Kobold are actually an evolved version of the Trogs, which, as I said, are the failed version of the Earthen. And even though they don't really look that much better than the Trog or anything like the actual Earthen, in fact, they are more intelligent than the Trogs. When it comes to their appearance, they're not exactly lucky because their average height is between 3 and 4 feet and they weigh between 70 and 100 pounds, and they kinda have hunched backs and these elongated snouts, so in many ways they kinda resemble rats, and it's not just the skin and the fur and the rat-like eyes, but their actual behavior, because they're very nervous, paranoid, they make these different rapid movements, they're always kinda moving, so that's something rats do, and they're very similar in that notion. However, it isn't really certain if they were always like this, but they do have a reason to be paranoid because they're a really weak race and they don't exactly pose much of a threat. On top of that, they're not even intelligent, so it wouldn't be surprising if they were cheated by other races or bullied, which actually does happen quite a lot. I mean, we have the gnolls that have killed many kobolds or forced them to work for them, and generally most races that are bigger than them just take advantage of them, which is why they're scared of the so-called outsiders and which is why they like to stick together. Although it isn't all that bad, as we have seen them actually make deals with other races such as the Harpies, as in offering them goods they need for the protection from the Harpies. They also collaborated with the Goblins, mostly just trading gold for supplies that they need to survive, but nothing really on a big scale. The Kobold can speak low common and common depending on the Kobold. They're not really that great at common, but they can speak low common, so they can talk to the other races, they can communicate, and occasionally a Kobold even learns the language of one of the big playable races like the humans or the orcs. It also wouldn't be surprising if they traded goods for protection or just hired straight out protection, because they're not exactly a fighter race, but if it really comes to it, they can defend themselves. I mean, separately, they're really weak because of their physique and they just try to run from trouble on the first sign, but if they're completely cornered and have no way to escape, they can be quite fierce. Also, since most of them live together, they attack in numbers, just like the Murloc, by swarming their target and just trying to bite at the most vulnerable spots and just trying to overwhelm the target. However, even in numbers, they're not exactly brave and they don't really fight the last kobold. They're not an honorable race, since in a lot of cases they would just run if they notice they're losing, just abandoning their friends, their nest and their young. Most of the kobold live in caves and dark places, and they're usually together, as I mentioned earlier, but once in a while there is a kobold that just feels adventurous and goes out into the world to seek adventure. However, it really depends if it works out or not, because in most cases it doesn't. Surprisingly enough, with them spending thousands of years in dark places, their sight hasn't really evolved much and they really can't see much better than your average human in dark caves. But instead they wear a candle on the top of their heads that lets them see in the dark, and they're overly protective of it. In some cases the entire candle thing is just mainly because they're dumb and it's the most important thing in their lives, but mainly it's just an inside joke by Blizzard. When it comes to magic for them, it is quite simple. They practice a very basic form of elemental shamanism called geomancy, and they can cast some shields and certain projectiles, but all in all, it is very basic, and they definitely do not have like a sophisticated form of shamanism like the orcs or the dwarves. Alright, that is all I have for this video. Now, this one is actually quite short compared to the others, but then again, the kobolds aren't exactly like a lore-rich race, so there isn't really all that much to talk about. Although, do leave your own suggestions on which races you would like to see covered next, and also don't forget to like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel and keeps all the videos going. And thanks a lot for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and see you next time.